Welcome everybody. Let's take a look at what kind of art we are going to be building in this course here. Now this course we're going to look at coding the actual content, building the art assets, and then reshaping the code. Now what's interesting about this process is that this process is probably the best way to make a game. And what bigger studios do, and if you want to build a game by yourself, doing this process multiple times, so code, art, reshape the code and with the art. And if you do that multiple times, you actually get better and your game gets better and it gets more fleshed out and the quality eventually goes up. Now, this process is probably the easiest way to build a game. The way that you probably don't want to build a game is you don't want to start with the art and then kind of figure out the code. Because games are all about interactivity and game mechanics primarily, and the art is of course integral, but there are games out there that just have pure mechanics and they've actually made a lot of money. And this is something that you might want to try as well, just trying to make a game with just pure mechanics and then add the art later. The thing about this course is that we actually get to build the art, and this is crucial because most courses they kind of just drag in art from the Unity Asset Store or somewhere else, and this is great because you can get good looking art for a relatively inexpensive price. The problem with this is that you don't know how much this art cost to make or how much time it took. It could have taken 200 hours or it could have taken a lot of money for someone to actually pay to do. Art is way more labor intensive than you probably think. And this course is supposed to show you how labor intensive it is. Now all of the art within this project here that we're going to be building and all the projects here is very simple. And we've done that on purpose. This course is primarily a coding course with an art edition versus an art course with a coding edition. So what we've done here is we've shown you how to make low poly art. And this is because the art in this course is supposed to be for beginners. And it's supposed to show you how long it takes to even make the simplest art. Now, Kevin, our 3D artist that you'll be listening to in this course, will show you how to build simple art. Now, the way that Kevin did this is that he prototyped things beforehand, and then what he did is he recorded it. So let's say you're going through this project here, and you go through a project, and an art asset takes 30 minutes to do. Well, it could have taken maybe 2 or 3 times as long to prototype that before we actually recorded it. So if you want something more detailed, it's going to take many more hours to do other than just making this, making the art that you see in the runtime of the actual tutorial. So you have to keep that in mind. So let's say you want to become a game developer. You have to know how long it takes to make the art, because if you hire someone to do the art, and they quote you like 100 hours for a simple project, you have to say, okay, I understand, that makes sense. I've done art, I've made the art, and I understand that it takes that long. If you want to be a great developer, you have to know how long each of the process takes to actually make the game. That's the coding, and that's anything that's within coding, like gameplay coding, character animation, anything that has to do with coding, multiplayer, etc. And you need to know how long it takes to make art assets, animations, etc. Even uploading to the App Store can take a week. In fact, it takes some studio months just to upload it to the App Store. When you upload a game to the App Store or any other store, it can take a while, especially for consoles. Consoles actually take a lot longer to upload. It can take months, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. If you're an indie studio, however, it could take maybe a day or 2. Even Apple, with its review times, it can take maybe a few days. It used to be a lot longer, but the submission process is much easier now. So having said that, and just to kind of recap here, we are going to be building art, but the art is going to be simple and low poly. The reason why we did that is because we want to show people how long it takes to do the art, and at the end of the day, we're going for a low poly aesthetic, which means that if you want to make art, low poly is probably the easiest way to get the most aesthetic value. So let's talk a little bit about the program that we're going to be using to make this art. The program that we're going to be using is called Blender, and the best part about Blender is that it's free. Now, the alternatives to Blender are actually thousands of dollars, and I'm not exaggerating when I say thousands of dollars. So the fact that Blender is free and that it is very, very effective is great because you, as the customer and the student, do not have to pay thousands of dollars. Now, these other programs do have kind of student platforms where you can go and get them for free. However, it's very difficult to actually do that, and I think you have to be a part of an institution, and there was no way to actually use these other programs. So Blender being free is awesome, and it's great because, again, you don't have to pay anything. Now, the art in this course is, again, simple and low poly, and the reason why we've done that is to show you how to make the most aesthetic value with the least amount of time. Picking a good aesthetic is important. If you go and make art that doesn't look good and is too detailed, your game won't be good. If you're making simple games, like the games that you're going to be making in this course, it's best to have a simple aesthetic. The way that I like to call this is I like to call it the uncanny valley of production. If you have a simple game and it works really well with simple art, you can't go and make more complicated art poorly. If you want to make more complicated art, it has to be done so well to go to the other side. And hence there's that valley, or the uncanny valley of production. You see this a lot with games. Simple games tend to have simple art because it complements the style of the game. And more complicated games have more complicated art because it fits the style of the game. So you want to make sure that you fit whatever art aesthetic that you pick into the actual game that you're going to make. So what's interesting about this course is that, again, you get to build all of the models and you get to go through the entire game development process. Mostly in this course, we are going to be using materials to put on the models. And if you don't know what that is, Kevin, our resident 3D artist, will go and explain it to you. Mostly we're not adding in textures because that adds in a whole other level of complexity. We will show you how to add textures. However, most of the models here you see in the games will not have textures, will have materials. And believe it or not, a lot of really successful games have done this, and that's why we decided to show you how to do that as well. We've noticed that some of the top selling apps in the App Store didn't have any textures. It was just simply materials on their models, and this is great because you get to build the most amount of aesthetic value for the least amount of time in Blender here. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this is that we are going to be talking about the pipeline. Now, the pipeline is how you go from Blender to Unity, and anytime that you have a 3D model, you have to talk about the pipeline because 3D models in Blender are not the same as 3D models in Unity. There is a bit of a difference. So usually you have to go from Blender and export it to Unity. And we show you how to do all that, and we show you how to do that efficiently. Believe it or not, this process of pipeline can take a ton of time when you are making a game. And if you are making a game by yourself or with a friend, or it's in your spare time or something like that, you want to make sure that you spend the least amount of time, because the more time you spend on your game, there's less time being spent actually on the App Store or wherever you want to sell it. You want to get your game into the hands of your players as quickly as you can, and you don't want to spend time in the pipeline. So generally, the pipeline in this is going to be from Blender to Unity, but more complicated pipelines might see Blender to a third-party rigger/animator to Unity. And that is, again, more complicated. So we're making the pipeline simple, and the games that we're going to make are simple and they look good, so that you spend the least amount of time making the art.